Thomas, the other disciples, and Jesus. These are the characters. A room with the door locked. This is the setting for the play. This is a play to which we come with a certain set of expectations. That's because we have, all of us, been handed a script or walked under a marquee, both of which bear the title Doubting Thomas by John. Except that today, let's imagine that the script, either through years of use by exuberant actors or through vandalism, has the front page torn off. And let's imagine that we enter the theater not through the main entrance, but through the stage door. The door opens onto an alley. There is no sign above it at all. And still more, let's imagine that the title, which we cannot see, maybe, isn't Doubting Thomas after all, but rather is something entirely different. So when we sit in our seats and the lights go down and the curtain goes up, there is nothing to steer or deflect our expectations in one direction or another. This play could be about anything. On the stage behind the freshly raised curtain are 3 walls constructed out of lath and plaster and cigarette smoke and decades of paint. The ceiling is made out of something similar, parts of it flaking apart, water stains in its corners, the story of a worn-down roof, or an overflowing bathtub in the apartment above. In the middle of the same ceiling hangs a light fixture, high-fashion 70 years ago, some but not all of the light bulbs still functional and giving off a dusty and lonely light. From somewhere behind you in the theater, a projector flickers on and sends white text across the air and onto the room's back wall. The text says, "The night of the resurrection." And then the projector fades out and the lights on the rest of the stage brighten. There are 10 actors in the room. Some of them sitting on the highly experienced couch in the corner, the nexus for so many parties in better days. Some of them sit around a worn wooden table in the room's center. Some of them sit or lie on the floor. They all of them look exhausted and shocked, survivors on the far side of an earthquake or a car accident or a bombing run. Nobody talks. But every now and again, one of them gets up to look out the one and only window or to check the locks on the one and only door. The door is bolted and chained, and someone has jammed the 2x4 across it. When the actors check the door and the window, enough light falls onto them for you to see the fear in their eyes and the way that their exhausted hands shake. Maybe, you think, a monster lives on the far side of the door. Or watching this play as you are in a time of pandemic, maybe a disease, silent and invisible and deadly, lives on the far side of the door. You know as well all the actors from previous plays. Missing is Thomas, his whereabouts unknown and undisclosed, and missing as well are Jesus and Judas, both of whom are dead. The room in which the 10 sit has an implied fourth wall. It sits where the curtain was just a moment before between you, the audience, and the actors. Perhaps you have heard the expression, breaking the fourth wall. To break the fourth wall is for an actor to start speaking directly to the audience, directly to you, for the actor to acknowledge out loud that they are in a play, for them to admit that the wall between you and them was imagined the whole time, thus rendering its imaginary brick and mortar broken. The breaking of this wall is what happens now. One of the 10, functioning as something like a narrator, says, "When it was evening on the first day of the week." The first day of the week being not Monday, but Sunday. When it was evening on the first day of the week, and the doors of the house were closed for fear of the religious authorities. Now, some versions of the script say, "for fear of the Jews," but that does not make sense. All 10 of the actors on stage are Jews. The 3 who are missing from the room are Jews. For fear of the Jews makes as much sense as 10 people from Portland hiding in a room for fear of the Portlanders. So fear of the religious authorities is what our narrator says. And then, those words spoken, you aren't sure how it happens. Maybe it is some trick left over from the days of vaudeville. There are 11 on stage. Jesus is there. "Peace be with you," he says. And the 10 who a moment ago were drowning in their fear go absolutely bonkers. They rejoice. "Peace be with you," Jesus says once more. "As the Father sent me, I send you." and then he breathes upon them. You see the chandelier up in the ceiling swing. Receive, Jesus says. Receive the Holy Spirit. Blackout. A beat, and then once again the projector's text leaps across the darkness. 1 week later, the back wall proclaims. The lights fade back up. There are still 11 on stage, but now the 11th is not Jesus, but Thomas. The other 10 look like they have not stopped rejoicing the whole week. They look like they are on the far side of spring break, one long party. They're rejoicing notwithstanding the door is still locked, bolts and chains and the 2x4. Thomas does not share in the 10's jubilation. There's a look of frustration, maybe of defiance or determination or principle on his face. I want to receive, he says to all of them, the same thing that you received. I want to see Jesus just like you saw Jesus. And then he says something curious. I want to see the nail marks in his hands. And then something even more curious still. I want to put my hands into his wounds. For reasons that no one explains, not the projector and its text, not the actor who breaks the fourth wall, not Thomas himself, Thomas doesn't say what you might expect, which is, I want to see Jesus and know that he's okay, that his wounds have healed. He says the very opposite. I want to see Jesus and know that he's not okay, that he is mortally wounded. I want to touch those wounds. And then as Thomas's words hang in the air, the same trick as before, now there are 12 on stage. Peace be with you, Jesus says. And then he speaks directly to Thomas. Put your finger in the wounds in my hands, he says. Put your hand in the wound in my side. Blackout, again, but this one briefer than the first. When the lights come back up, everyone is still on stage, but Thomas's face, everything about him is changed. He is transformed. He is the picture of awe. My Lord, he says to Jesus, my Lord and my God. And there in the audience, you were left to wonder. In the blackout, did Thomas take Jesus up on his invitation? Did he place his hands into the Lord's body? Or was the offer by itself enough? You look at Thomas's hands to see, perhaps, if Jesus' blood is upon them, but you cannot decide. And then Jesus speaks once more. Have you believed because you have seen, he asked Thomas. And maybe this question is a clue. Jesus says seen, not touched, but still you are unsure. And then it is Jesus who breaks the fourth wall, who looks out across the theater, across the centuries at you. Blessed are those who have not seen and yet have come to believe. And then the curtain comes down, and though you know that you were supposed to applaud, the most honest ovation that you can give to this play is your silence. Eventually, you get up. You exit the theater not via the stage door, but via the front, the main entrance. And you realize that if you want, you can turn and look up at the marquee. You can learn the name of the play. But you do not. Something in you understands that you have just seen a play whose name you must choose for yourself.